Innovation is just a bunch of iterations spread out over a long period of time. And the iPhone 15 Pro Max is the best example of that. This is my iPhone 15 Pro Max review. If you are excited, do not forget to drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. So, I've been using the iPhone 15 Pro Max for the last week. And yeah, I have my final verdict on this phone. This is my full review because I've done so many things with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I've used it for 1 week, and I think now I got the idea how good it is, what's the better things about it, what the worst things about it. Should you buy it? Should you not buy it? I think now I've got a good idea about this phone. So yeah, for the last week, my experience has been 95% positive, 5% negative. So what do I mean by that? I've been using the iPhone 15 Pro Max for the last week. And one thing that I can tell you that this phone is really, really good. A big upgrade over the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But again, like I was telling you at the beginning of this video, small iterations stacked up together, they actually turn out to be innovation. Because this phone is another iteration of the iPhone. Yes, Apple has been the master of iterating the iPhone for the last few years. Because if they do change the iPhone too much, most people will actually be upset. Because people like to be comfortable what they have. They like the iPhone because it's similar to their older phones. They know how to use it, they feel comfortable doing their things on their iPhone, and that's why they don't leave Apple. So Apple needs to be very careful for what they put on their iPhones. They cannot create a different iPhone that's actually very different in design, in use cases, in the camera settings, in everything. iOS needs to be also the same almost every year. They need to innovate, but also keep it the same. This is why Apple needs to be very careful when they actually create a new iPhone. They cannot change it that much, but they also cannot change it too little because everyone will complain. So it's a very difficult balancing job for Apple. But I do believe they did it perfectly with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The iPhone 15 Pro Max is the perfect iteration. It's standing there between iteration and innovation because this is actually a very innovative phone. The iPhone 15 Pro Max features total new materials like titanium. They feature new ways of manufacturing, like the blend of titanium and aluminum, the way they painted the titanium, anodized the titanium. The way they made this phone is actually very, very different than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but they still kept the same design, the same familiarity between the iPhone 14 Pro Max and 15 Pro Max. If you are looking by far and you're not well educated, you are probably thinking that this is the iPhone 14 Pro Max, looks the same as the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But if you get here close, you will actually notice that it isn't. So this is a great job by Apple. They are creating a familiar product, but that is also innovative and different at the same time. So let's talk about the design of the iPhone 15 Pro Max, because this year, that's one of the biggest changes. The iPhone 15 Pro Max comes now in titanium, especially the Pro models now have the titanium material. This is super cool because it now enables the iPhones to be much lighter and much more durable than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. On the durability side though, we had some problems because according to drop tests, these phones can break way easier. But I don't attribute it to the titanium, but to the new contoured edge design. The contoured edge design makes the glass touch the ground much more easily, it's not as protected by the frame, and so it breaks easily. So again, these are very durable phones, but they are not as durable as the iPhone 14 Pro. Again, proven by the actual drop tests on YouTube. But the one thing you gotta keep in mind is these phones are still very, very durable. This design is better because in my opinion, being lighter, being less bulkier than the iPhone 14 Pro Max and 13 Pro and the older iPhones with stainless steel is much, much better. They are a bit smaller. The titanium frame, in my opinion, looks better than the smudgier stainless steel. So I do believe this is a pretty big jump. On the camera side, in terms of design, it's about the same. On the front of this phone, it's about the same. The only difference now we have smaller bezels. So now the biggest changes are the materials used, so titanium, and the contoured edge design. And we also have now 4 different colors. We have the iPhone 15 Pro Max available on natural titanium, this color right here, on white titanium, like silver, this color right here, we also have a blue titanium and a black titanium. I gotta tell you that my favorite color is the natural titanium. I also love this white titanium, looks really, really good. But after a while, I've decided that the natural titanium is the best. So I do believe the colors easier, although not that saturated, they look pretty cool. As for the design, it's now much more comfortable to hold for long periods of time. The contoured edge design makes this phone much more comfortable and as easily to hold as the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The iPhone 14 Pro Max felt premium in the hand, but those sharp edges actually cut into your hand very much. So now with this contoured edge design, I do believe we are in the right path to the perfect iPhone design. But again, with this new design, with these new contoured edges, the natural titanium color, this year's iPhone design, in my opinion, is the best design ever. So this here is another example of how iteration can actually be innovation if you are looking at by far. So think about it. The iPhone changed design to a squared off side and flat edges with the iPhone 12. And then the iPhone 13 got the same design. The iPhone 14 got the same design. And then Apple just changed it a tiny bit with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So as you can tell, the iPhone 15 Pro Max now has these contoured edges, which they probably don't look by far like they are very different. But if you hold it on your hand, you will feel it. And it's a pretty big deal in my opinion. Together with the titanium, make the iPhone 15 Pro Max, in my opinion, the best design ever on an iPhone. So I'm super excited to continue to use this design to see what Apple can iterate over this design and perfect it. Because remember, iterating a product is not just more than perfecting it. So I'm super excited to see what Apple does with this design in the next few years. Another thing that has also changed on the iPhone 15 Pro Max is the display. The display now has way less bezels. Trust me, way smaller. And you feel it, you can see it. Because when you are looking for the first time at this display, you'll say, oh my gosh, the bezels are smaller, way smaller. They are pretty cool. And this also enabled Apple to make these iPhones a tiny bit smaller. So keeping the same 6.1 inch and 6.7 inch displays, but now they are a bit smaller, which is good in my opinion. We need smaller iPhones with the same amount of display. I'm super excited because the iPhone 15 Pro Max now is a bit smaller and lighter than my iPhone 14 Pro Max, which was one of my biggest complaints on that phone's review. I told you that iPhone was too bulky, too big, for my opinion. Although I've used the 14 Pro Max because of the extra display and battery, I thought that iPhone was really heavy and bulky. Now, Apple actually fixed my complaints because this iPhone feels much lighter and this display is as big. So this is a 120Hz ProMotion panel with 2000 nits peak brightness, small bezels, features dynamic island. So it's about the same display as the iPhone 15s, which this year actually got a huge jump on that regard, and it's about the same display as the iPhone 14 Pro Max with smaller bezels. So if you still have an iPhone 14 Pro Max, you won't notice the biggest jump ever to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. This is a very small upgrade to the display, less bezels, and of course, that was it, nothing more. One thing we can say that was not a small change was the port. The iPhone 15 Pro Max now features USB-C, and that, oh my god, that's probably the biggest change together with the cameras on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. These two phones now feature USB-C, and USB-C is a very big deal. USB-C can now enable you to transfer footage much faster. This is USB-C 3.0, not USB-C 2.0, found on the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus. USB-C 3.0 enables faster transfer speeds, enables 4K 60 ProRes recording to external SSDs, enables charging your Apple Watch, your AirPods, and other accessories. So USB-C on the iPhone is not just changing the port, it's upgrading the port. And this is not iteration, this is pure innovation. The iPhone 15 Pro Max now featuring USB-C is probably one of the biggest changes to the iPhone since the Lightning port. This is huge, and I do believe most people will love. I only had that moment on my week where I was trying to plug in my iPhone 15 Pro Max to my car using Lightning cable, and I tried it and it didn't plug. And I was like, it's USB-C, it doesn't plug in. So everyone will have that moment when they switch to the iPhone 15 Pro, Pro Max and 15 lineup with USB-C. After a while, you will get used to it and you will love it. I use it to charge my MacBook, my iPad, and now my iPhone. So I'm super happy for Apple to add the USB-C to the iPhone. The EU forced Apple to do it. I don't like that approach, but I mean, it was the good decision. Because charging your Apple Watch, charging your AirPods, charging other people's iPhones and Android phones is a really cool feature. Like, it's very, very underrated. You can use a cable to charge your Apple Watch on a pinch. If, for example, you are on a concert on the mall and your AirPods die, you can just plug in your iPhone to your AirPods, charge it by a bit. Like, if you have 80%, you can charge your AirPods very, very comfortably, and you'll have a charge on your AirPods again. This is really cool because before your AirPods would have died and you wouldn't have any chance to actually use them again until you got home. So USB-C now is a pretty big deal. On the camera features, the iPhone 15 Pro Max's USB-C also enables ProRes at 4K 60 recording, 4K 30 frames per second to an external SSD. This is really cool because before you had to actually record it to your iPhone, you will be very limited with the storage and the amount of time you could record. But now with the external SSDs, you can just plug it into your iPhone, record directly to an external SSD, then plug into your Mac and transfer the footage. So USB-C is also a very pro feature on the iPhone. As for the speakers on this phone, this year they seem different. I was using the speakers on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I've noticed that I was starting to hear sounds behind me and on the side, and no one is talking about it. But I don't know, I think that these speakers are better. I cannot tell you how or why. You have to try it on person. Like, even on this video I cannot show you because if I record the speaker comparison, the iPhone 14 Pro Max would be still very good. The iPhone 13 Pro Max is still very good. But you have to use it on person to notice the difference. I was like hearing a YouTube video that had piano music behind it on a background music, and I started to hear the music behind me and on the side. And I was like, where does that sound come from? This is weird. I don't have AirPods on. What's happening? So I do believe that the stereo capabilities and the Dolby Atmos capabilities of this phone are getting better. I don't know. It's just an actual prediction of mine, but it's just a feeling that I have from using this phone for the last week. I haven't heard or seen anyone talk about it, but I will leave it here on this review. I do believe that the speakers on the iPhone 15 Pro Max are better, especially the Dolby Atmos capabilities and the stereo capabilities. Let me know in the comments below if you have an iPhone 15 Pro Max. Have you heard the same? Have you had the same experience as me? So way better speakers with the Dolby Atmos? Let me know in the comments down below. The iPhone 15 Pro Max also introduced a new feature, and that was the action mode button. This button is really cool, but I haven't used it that much. I do believe this will be a very useful feature for people that actually like to create their smart home thing. So they have a very set up smart home where when they get home, they want the lights to turn on. And so having the action button can trigger the Shortcuts app and then, of course, start a new whole action whenever they enter their house, whenever they enter their garage. So it could be a very cool button for you to open your garage door, to open your home, to turn on your lights, turn on any type of feature using the Shortcuts app. That could be a very good addition to the iPhone. For me, I've turned it on. I've turned it on for the camera, but I never used it that much. Just like my Apple Watch Ultra action button, I don't use it that much. And maybe in the future, I will put it again on the silent mode. I don't know. I just never used it that much. And of course, if you want to know how you do it, just go into settings, open the settings for the action button, and you will reach this menu. This menu is weird. I know it doesn't go in with iOS that much. Here, you can change whatever you want to. This action button has several actions. And on top of that, if you select the Shortcuts app, you have infinite amount of choices for this action button. So a really good option. This is a very Android-like feature, but I think it's a pretty cool one. The battery life on the iPhone 15 Pro Max has completely disappointed me. This phone should be better. It has a 3nm chip, so a more efficient architecture, and I was expecting it to have like almost the same amount of battery that my iPhone 13 Pro Max when it was new had. Now, I'm disappointed. This has about the same battery life as the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So, pretty average, but not incredible. It lasts me one whole day of using it very hard. Yesterday, I was testing out the cameras for the next part of the video, the camera examples, and this phone did not last me the whole day. It died by 11 o'clock at night, so late, but not great. So the iPhone 15 Pro Max battery life kind of disappointed me. I don't know, maybe I was expecting it too much. Maybe I had the hype very high because of the A17 Pro chip, but still, very disappointed with the battery life. It's not bad, but it's not incredible. Again, having 6, 7, 8-hour days, it's not bad with the phone, but with an iPhone that probably promised more with the A17 Pro chip having better efficiency, having bigger batteries, I really thought that I could get probably close to the 9, 10-hour battery life. But We didn't. So it's not bad battery life if you are looking for this phone and thinking, oh, is it bad? No, it isn't. It's good battery life, and for you, lasting 1 day will probably be way more than enough. But I remember with my iPhone 13 Pro Max, it could last me 2 days. Those were the days where the battery life on the iPhone was really, really crazy. And for those of you thinking that this is probably just my iPhone 15 Pro Max, no, this is my experience using two different iPhones that came at 2 different days. So the 15 Pro Max Natural Titanium came out last week for me, so I only use it for about 4 days, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max White Titanium, I've been using it for 7 days. I've used this phone for the first 3 days. I had about the same battery as this phone for the last 4. So yeah, about the same battery to average out. Again, not very impressive. We reach now the best part of our review, and probably the one that you are most expecting, the camera. The camera on the iPhone 15 Pro Max is especially the biggest part of this new iPhone. This is the purest example of how iteration can be complete innovation if stacked up over time. Because, believe me, the iPhone 15 Pro Max cameras are way, way bigger than you are probably thinking. The upgrade here is huge, and if you are a filmmaker slash photographer or someone that likes to create video and photo for a hobby, buy the iPhone 15 Pro Max. This is the best beginner camera out there. So, the iPhone 15 Pro Max can also record in the log format. This is the ungraded version of the log format. It enables you get way more colors out of your footage. The highlights, the shadows are also retaining more information. But then, of course, you have to apply a lot to this to become a real footage. This gives you way more creative control, and you can match the colors with other Sony, Canon, and other mirrorless cameras. Of course, this will never replace a Sony mirrorless camera. This is my Sony a6700 without any type of log footage, any type of edit. No, just with some fixed shutter speeds and ISOs, and this is the video quality you get. So, as you can see, it's much better than the iPhone 15 Pro Max log footage. But the iPhone 15 Pro Max is getting closer, real close. And so, this is the next step of the iPhone footage video. So, I'm super excited for you filmmakers to start using this. This camera is incredible. Having 3 cameras, the same 3 cameras as the iPhone 14 Pro Max, the jump is huge. You have a main sensor, a 48 megapixel main sensor. It's really good because you can crop in the image for 1.2x, 1.5x, and not lose almost any type of quality. So you have a 24, 28, 35 millimeter equivalent lens, really good. The ultra-wide lens is the same. It's not very much different from the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and there I don't have much to complain. At night, during the day, this lens behaves well. It's not great. Probably next year Apple needs to improve on this lens, and it's probably the weakest link on the iPhone 15 Pro Max camera setup. The telephoto on the Pro Max is a 5x telephoto. It's a really good camera. The portrait photography you can take here is incredible. The natural bokeh here is insane. And of course the main sensor, the main 48 megapixel sensor takes incredible 48 megapixel shots on the Pro RAW mode. And obviously when you're not using Pro RAW mode, the iPhone 15 Pro Max takes 24 megapixel shots. And this is the biggest jump over older iPhones, because before, even with the 40 megapixel sensor on the Pro Max, the 14 Pro Max, you would be taking 12 megapixel shots, and other Android phones do the same. But now, the 15 models, they take 24 megapixel shots, so double the resolution, double the quality. The iPhone 15 Pro Max cameras are insane. But coupled with this is the new A17 chip, which enables very high intelligence and AI on the camera on the iPhone. You can capture automatic portrait modes. Now, that's a pretty big feature, because when you are taking photos of a subject, you don't want to think that, oh, do I take a portrait photo? Do I take a normal photo? Now, you just take a normal photo, and the iPhone will recognize the subject and give you this F on the left down bottom corner. And this corner here will tell you that it's capturing the information for creating the bokeh later on at the edit scene. Then you take the photo, you go into the edit button on the Photos app, and you can add the bokeh later, change the focus. This is a pretty cool feature. And if you are taking a photo and it doesn't show up on your camera app, then just tap wherever you want to focus and the iPhone will give you the F. So yeah, taking the F, do not get me wrong, is telling you that recognizing the information, taking out the information for you later on the Photos app, adding the bokeh. The fake bokeh, but still really good. So the portraits now on the iPhone 15 Pro Max are much better, especially with the 5x telephoto. The 5x telephoto is the new addition to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. This is a tetrascope lens, and I've seen some reviews saying that this lens is not as good. Maybe the iPhone 15 Pro had the 3x telephoto, which is also better for most people. But wait, I don't agree. I don't agree with that because I do believe that the 5x telephoto, the 120mm lens here, is really, really, really good. Like amazingly good. You can take incredible portrait photography. The background blur will be very natural because it's an f4 lens with 120mm. So when you are taking a portrait of someone at 120mm having an f4 aperture, you will notice the difference and the natural blur. It's incredible. In my opinion, the best portrait lens ever to be added to the iPhone. It also gives you a different perspective. I do believe that this lens enables you to take incredible shots that before you couldn't. Because, I don't know, it's just weird the compression that it gives you at 120mm. It looks insane. I've taken some very, very cool photos with this. It also enables you to zoom out at 25x. And when you do that, it's crazy. Like, it gives you this little shortcut on the top right corner, I think, where it shows you wherever you are moving, just like the S23 Ultra, just to try to help you to locate yourself on your camera app, because zooming 25x far is really, really far. And now you have that called scumbag zoom. Flossie Carter, that's for you. But scumbag zoom, like he likes to call it, is a really cool feature on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The quality is not as good as the under the X zoom on the Samsung S23 Ultra, but it's a really, really cool feature to have that the iPhone 15 Pro doesn't have. Of course, this at 4.9x and the iPhone 15 Pro at 4.9x is much, much better than iPhone because it's cropping in on a 3x telephoto, while this is cropping in on the main sensor, the main 48 megapixel sensor. But from 3x to 4.9x, the 15 Pro wins. From 4.9x forward, the 15 Pro Max wins. So that's something you gotta decide. Obviously, iPhone cameras get better every single year. This is not news. And yeah, Apple is obliged every year to improve the camera. But this year it feels different, like I was telling you. The HDR is much, much better. The low light performance is much better because of the bigger size sensor. Everything on the iPhone 15 Pro Max camera is better. But it's still not enough to compete with mirrorless cameras and actual cameras, full frame cameras. Because I went outside and actually made a small comparison between these two phones. I've taken some photos, the iPhones, the same photos with my mirrorless camera, and yeah, it's still not enabled to compete. Low light, normal light, HDR is still just not enough. But still, don't get me wrong, the iPhone 15 Pro Max camera is great, way better than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and in my opinion, the best phone camera in the world right now. But it's still a phone camera, so I don't think it can compete with actual cameras. But, of course, you gotta keep in mind that a normal camera costs $1,500. For example, my Sony a6700 costs $1,500, and the iPhone costs $1,500. This is a small computer on your hand, can do everything, while the camera is just a camera. So you gotta know what you are into. If you just want an iPhone for the camera, buy the camera. If you want the iPhone because it's a cool iPhone, it does everything that you need for an iPhone, and then it's a camera, of course the iPhone is way, way better deal. But it will never, never beat a normal camera. Those have much bigger sensors, and it's much harder to beat those cameras with these tiny, tiny bit little sensors. But of course, this HDR is incredible. This amazing low light performance for an iPhone's camera is incredible, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max is getting better every year. So yeah, the iPhone camera is getting better, but again, like I told you, small iterations stacked up together over the time, they will still start feeling like innovation. And the iPhone 15 Pro Max especially is starting to feel like that. So I think that my final verdict on the iPhone 15 Pro Max will be that this phone is worth buying for those people that have the iPhone 13 Pro Max and older. If you have an iPhone 14 Pro Max, obviously doesn't make any sense to upgrade unless you are a filmmaker, a cinematographer, and you want to use the ProRes log. That's an incredible feature that you want for your workflow, or you want to use external SSDs to record your ProRes using the USB-C port, or you really like the USB-C port and you want to have it on your ecosystem, because I do believe that older iPhones with Lightning will be obsolete in a couple of years. But other than that, I don't see the need to upgrade for this iPhone. Titanium is cool, being lighter is cool, but is it worth it like the $300 that you are going to spend over this iPhone? You only have to sell your iPhone 14 Pro Max and then buy this iPhone, which currently is kind of sold out. You will have to wait 2-3 more months to get it. So yeah, only if you do really care about the cameras and the nicer materials, go for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But I do believe that the star of this show this year is the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus. Those are a huge improvement over the iPhone 14s. And if you have a normal iPhone, if you don't like to buy the Pro models, that's an amazing, amazing buy for you. But if you want to buy the Pro models, keep in mind, these are the best iPhones ever. This is, in my opinion, the best phone on the planet right now. But the iteration over time has actually turned out to be innovation. And the iPhone 15 Pro Max will be a huge innovation if you are coming from older iPhones. If you are coming from the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it will feel just like another iteration of the iPhone. So keep that in mind. But of course, you can buy it. In my opinion, this is the best iPhone ever, like I told you. And titanium frames, being lighter, having smaller bezels, having a better camera, for me it's worth it. But let me know in the comments below what you think about the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Would you buy it? Do you have an iPhone 14 Pro Max and you want to upgrade? Let me know your current status of the iPhone. And of course, iteration is hard. Innovation is even harder. But let me know in the comments down below, what is your current status of the iPhone? Do you have the iPhone 15 Pro Max? Are you going to buy the iPhone 15 Pro Max? Which iPhone do you use? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. Innovation is hard, iteration is even harder. Thank you guys for watching. This has been TechSmart talking to you here. Bye bye.